All right, on this installment of Liberty Music, happy to be talking to an individual from the group Disturbed Furniture, getting some time with Alexa Hunter today, and just appreciate the insights on this project here. Continuous Pleasures, a 5 song EP, and just going to be covering a few topics today. So, how's your day going so far there?
So far, so good. So so far, I can't really complain except too much to do in too little time. But I think that's pretty average.
Yeah, and I'm curious about how the reunion has been going. Reunited about like 2 years ago or so, and then getting some,
Yeah.
live and recorded new music going on and stuff like that. So, how's that been kind of getting back to it?
It's very exciting and very unexpected. It kind of began as a sort of a one shot. We should reunite because our videos were part of this great museum show in New York City at the Museum of Modern Art. Um, it was through their Department of Film, and it was mostly film, but then it was artifacts as well, and videos of our band resurfaced that I didn't even have copies of, and were included in the show, and they were good. I hadn't seen them in 30 years, or 20 maybe. I'm exaggerating. So because of these four videos that we had shot in 1980, I was inspired to contact former members of the band and suggest getting back together on this occasion. And I guess we just got swept into the swirl of this reinvestigation of that time, of the late 70s, early 80s New York band scene.
And that was for Jeffrey O'Connor's Black and White video. Is that the video you were alluding to there?
Actually, that also was very inspiring. But the first tapes that the museum acquired were the four songs that were shot by Barry Shills and Andy Reese, and edited by a guy named Steve Brown, who passed away a long time ago, but was worked with Nirvana on their first couple of videos. He was a really amazing editor. So those were the first part that got the ball rolling. That 4 song series of videos that were shot in the studio, and then the other video shot by Jeffrey O'Connor, who's a really fantastic documentarian, and he makes features also out of New York. Old friend. He had this great footage that we shot on the streets of Chinatown in New York, black and white, very sort of nouveau vague. What's the term? The new wave cinema of France in the '60s. You know, it had a very Godardy kind of vibe. So that footage also was in the MoMA show, and I edited it for the first time in 30 years. And by the way, we are going to be streaming those videos on, I'm not sure if it's YouTube yet. I'm not sure what we're streaming them as or on, but they will be shown publicly more soon.
That must be exciting for sure.
Indeed. Indeed. So is there an 80s music revival up in Ottawa also?
I think there's definitely some intrigue that surrounds like certain music like that and kind of presenting it in like the modern day and everything like that. But when did the dialogue get going on for this 5 song EP that I'd mentioned, Continuous Pleasures? Like when did the conversation get going for that?
So what happened was the museum show was up for 7 or 8 months in New York, and I went back on 3 different occasions, and we kept getting booked at little clubs, or not so little clubs, Bowery Electric, and the Mercury Lounge and Lovecraft, and I realized that it was sort of it was moving forward like a little snowball, getting bigger. So I just thought it would be really cool to go back in the recording studio. I'd always wanted to make another record with this music, and it was rather spontaneous. I found a studio in Brooklyn that was very analog oriented, and in the beginning, the recording was an analog recording project. It ended up having some digital overlays on it, but the heart and soul of it was analog. It was really get back in the studio and bring those old vibes back from the 80s.
And did the analog sort of quality of it kind of lend itself to what you wanted sonically out of the project? Was that like a really conscious sort of choice to, you know, be at Mighty Toad Recording and the Honey Jar?
It was very conscious. It and you know, I think it became complicated because I live in Los Angeles, and the two other members of the band, we're a trio at this point. We use a different bass player depending on where we're playing, you know, New York or coming up in Los Angeles. We'll get into that. But the three of us, we felt like analog spoke to the kind of the heart of this band, what it was. It was part of the analog world, and it's just warmer. It just felt warmer.
Yeah, I think sonically it lends itself to what you guys are doing, and we also talk about like the, you know, visual aspects of the band kind of informing that as well and kind of underpinning all of that. And I also liked the flyer art there from Mark Lita. Like you had the one circa 1981 that you posted.
Yes, Mark Lita, he was a dear friend, also gone from AIDS, and just like at the beginning of his career when he did that flyer, which is now T-shirts also, that we have merch for the first time. You know, we're trying to be in the 21st century. We're going to have a CD version of the record. You know, T-shirts, CDs, and vinyl. I'm so excited about the vinyl. Really, that is just pinch me.
Yeah, it's awesome to see all this stuff happening, you know, especially like after like everything going on in the New York underground club scene 35 years ago, and to now sort of be doing some of these things that presumably you've wanted to do for a long period of time.
And this reunion with the band, it's paralleling my reunion with my old Club 57 friends, you know, some of whom I never stopped being in touch with. And we have a sort of contingent of those New York people here in LA. And in fact, I just co-curated an art show with one of them, one of our dignitaries, Ann Magnuson, who is also in the music world with a number of CDs and wonderful videos. In fact, a lot of these people from my old club scene are reissuing old work, reinvestigating old work, and finding that it has an audience today, which is delightful. With the youngsters.
And I also noticed you've done some visual art in past as well. Like you had a professional show as part of a Club 57 exhibition and everything like that. And to that point, since you're involved in music as well, I'm kind of curious, is it normally you create the song and then that informs the visual after the fact? Or do you ever come into a situation with like a visual for something and then that inspires a song?
I think they're separate, but sometimes a visual will come to me in the middle of writing a song, and it will hit me in the face and just seem like the perfect color and the perfect face or whatever the subject is of the visual. It's part of it. It's definitely part of the process. It's not completely separate, but I just call it like a different part of the brain, the visuals. And I grew up around art. My parents were both in the art world, so that was like my first language, was painting and sculpture.
Yeah, it seems like you express yourself in a lot of different ways, and from what I'm seeing here, you also were inspired by, you know, some punk rock earlier on and everything like that, and that kind of guided you towards music. I'm kind of wondering, like, what the moment was like to be playing with The Clash. I mean, that must have just been like a kind of like surreal moment too.
Now, I have a slight correction there. We did not actually go on. We met in the dressing room, my rhythm guitarist, my drummer, my bass player, and we could not find our lead guitarist, who was this phenomenal Giorgio Garbassi, who just passed away this past year, sadly, did not take care of himself, and that was on the occasion of being asked to open for the Clash during, I don't know if you know this, it's sort of there's a whole website, I opened for the Clash because during this 1 week of gigs at Bonds, this was probably 1981, they, at the very last minute, decided to add dates, and they were looking to put in unsigned bands. But they wouldn't let you know about the gig until the day of. So the day of this opening for the Clash, we scrambled. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have beepers, and we couldn't find our lead guitarist. We all came to the club, the 4 out of the 5 of us. And then, in our strange democratic way, we decided not to go on stage because the lead guitarist, I was insecure and I was arrogant, and I thought, oh, this will happen again, let's not go on. We're not going to sound good enough. We really want to sound good when we open to the Clash, so let's not do it this time. We'll do it next time. And there wasn't a next time. So sad. So sad.
Was there certain frustrations at play like that kind of resulted in the band kind of calling it quits and going on that brief hiatus? Was it certain things like that kind of inspired that decision?
Yeah, it wasn't a brief hiatus. It's been 30 years. But it definitely shifted. I think the dynamics shifted. It's very hard to be democratic in a band, especially when you're the lead singer. You're sort of you can often become the mouthpiece. Here we are. I'm talking, and I am becoming the mouthpiece at this point. You want to take into consideration heavily everybody in the band. Otherwise, it's just, for hire musicians backing you up. So it was a group project by that point. And, it's hard to have 5 people work intensely on these kinds of projects, on bands. Other work comes up, other music projects come up. And I think I was young and naive, and I thought it was untenable, and I thought going more solo was a better direction, and I wouldn't have to put up with all the personalities. So, yes, hiatus. Hiatus happened after only, I think, 3 years was all we did together.
Yeah, so now...
changes in personnel. We had 3 different lead guitarists. We had several bass players.
Yeah, and just playing a lot of different shows over the years too, with like Psychedelic Furs and stuff like that, and the Go-Go's.
The Psychedelic Furs, and how great that they are still playing. I think I'm going to see them in Los Angeles in a few weeks.
Oh, that's gonna be a fun show for sure. I was kind of just curious though, like with like playing certain gigs like that. I'm curious if there's like any like notable gigs in the sense of like, because I really like the audiobook like Black Flag put out, the whole Get in the Van sort of thing. I'm wondering if there was like any notable moments while out on the road, like as I'm asking this question. Like, it doesn't have to be a negative thing per se, but it could be like a positive thing as well. But just like a distinct moment from a show that really like stands out in your mind from some past shows you played.
Distinct moments. So many, and they're, it's a little blurry because it's 30 years ago, 35 years ago, 37. Who's counting? I wish that I had interacted more with the Psychedelic Furs. They were a hot ticket, and David Bowie was in the audience, and one of the Sex Pistols, and it was very intimidating, because we hadn't been together that long. I guess our single was out. And Hurrah was one of these clubs that was very supportive of the local bands, but also was one of the first clubs to bring in the hot, young British bands, from Killing Joke to Psychedelic Furs at that point weren't a big deal. They were hot, but they weren't as big as they would become after they did soundtracks and stuff.
Something where I think the benefit of hindsight you can kind of like see. See where the band would end up developing. Just like where the band would end up developing and stuff like that. Like at the time, you said you wanted like maybe immerse yourself more into it, and they weren't like maybe like as hot back then per se, but like now they've developed into what they've developed into, and still maintaining that consistency and everything like that. Yes,
well, everyone is excited to be playing together again, but are still very involved in their own lives and projects, and everyone does interesting stuff, not just this Disturbed Furniture reunion. I just want to give a shout out to Mick Oakleaf, my drummer, who was probably with the band the longest of anyone, and he's an amazing sound engineer and has played with multitude of bands in New York. He is a very much in-demand drummer, and he's also helping with the graphic art aspect. He has many skills, and Jorge Arevalo, the guitarist, is also an amazing musician and works with the Woody Guthrie Foundation and the Alan Lomax Foundation. Cultural Equity, is got a PhD in ethnomusicology. So we have this trio of really active, involved folks, and it's the energy is great between us.
Yeah, it really seems like you guys are firing on all cylinders in a lot of ways, but I'm curious though if there's anything you want to add as a parting thought as we're wrapping things up here.
A parting thought. Just that I hope people download the songs. They're going to be on Spotify shortly. We're working on videos. I hope they buy the vinyl. Go to our website, disturbedfurniture.com. Like us on Instagram. Join us in the world of social media.
Yeah, Continuous Pleasures dropping August 9th. Should be a great 5-song EP, and just great to see Disturbed Furniture back at it, and just appreciate all the time and insights there, Alexa. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Dylan. Pleasure meeting you.